Every year, thousands of people migrate through Washington, D.C. to come and be a part of one of the nation's fastest growing communities. D.C. is home to a number of federal agencies and educational institutions, bringing students and professionals from all over the world to come and thrive in this historic city. The changes this city has underwent have been beneficial for some, however, it has posed a great threat as well. The rise in migrants has caused the housing market to rise, increasing the cost of living in a community that is culturally and economically diverse, leaving many to fight for a place here and even leaving some without a place at all.
I think I know what gentrification is.
We sat and talked with scholars, DC homeowners, and DC residents to get more insight on the issue of gentrification in DC, an issue that primarily affects minorities and the economically disadvantaged.
Equality, right? And so even though we have accomplished these things, there's so much more work to be done. In the 60s, when all the rioting was taking place, blacks were 2 times as likely to be unemployed. Today, blacks are 2 times as likely to be unemployed. In the 60s, when all the rioting was taking place, blacks made 70% of what whites made. Today, they make 60% of what whites made. In the 60s, during the rioting, blacks were 2 times as likely to live under the poverty line. Today, they are more than 3 times likely to live under the poverty line. So although we are working diligently, and we may be able to point at projects that have over 500,000 square feet of retail and over 2,000 jobs being created, it is not keeping pace with the gap that continues to widen. It is not the metrics that we have measured to show how people are able to compete in this system. It is not even reversing the numbers from an economic standpoint. Socially, you know, people will say, well, you can't. Come on. You can't say you're worse off than you were in the 60s. Look at the progress that has been made, right? Socially, yes. In the 60s, I remember there were 20 cities that had riots. Only 3 of those 20 had more than 1 black person in political office. That's definitely not the case today. In political offices, having a seat at the table to determine what is allocated where, to be able to say, I've got someone in office who I believe has my best interest at heart. Socially, this country has advanced leaps and bounds. Economically, we are where we were and worse. And that is a crisis. That is a crisis. And not enough people believe that it is. Not enough people know that it exists. And not enough people are actively trying to figure out how to reverse it and solve it.
Okay. Revitalization
Yeah.
of low-income neighborhoods?
Specifically urban areas, and with just like how the functioning of urban areas goes, it goes through periods of very poor, impoverished, usually minority communities being forced to live there, just for easier access to things. And then white flight, people move out to the suburbs, and then go through the whole process over again once they start regentrifying. And that kicks people out of their communities. It raises the prices on housing. It also adds a lot of shops and businesses that are catered towards a community that isn't even existing yet. It's like for future communities, like overpriced coffee shops and communities where they can't afford to get the cheapest cup of 7-Eleven coffee as opposed to some expensive Compass coffee or something of that nature.
I think it can be a bad thing, and I think it can be a good thing. It's only a bad thing because it affects the poor, it displaces the poor, but at the same time, it's a good thing because whereas the poor might not have taken care of neighborhoods, you have middle-class people that are ready to come in, buy, and turn over the neighborhood or revitalize it.
Right. As a student at Howard in the last 4 years and even in the last 10 years, I begin to see a lot of
residential changes taking place, condos and apartments, hotels, and also office buildings. I started to see these things when I was younger because you were still able to see whole blocks that had been burned out because of the riots.
The riots
in the 60s in DC. And just recently, like within the last 10 years, but even more so in the last 5, I've started to notice how a lot of the older stores and things, especially around U Street and 14th and Georgia, have changed and become either changed from local businesses to corporations, like say a Starbucks or something like that, or changed from like an empty lot or something that used to be there to an apartment complex, or like we have this thing over by the 930 Club right now that it's kind of like oh man, I forget the name of it. You know what I'm talking about?
by the 930 Club.
It's like right. It's like it's like
that
right
theater
behind
next
it.
door.
It's got a theater, but it also has like apartments, and it also has like art studios and stuff.
Yeah. All
Not the Loft. I'm trying to think. I forget the name.
It's cool.
But yeah,
A working definition of what gentrification is. Could you tell us what that is?
yeah. To me, gentrification is basically replacing what has been with what will be, in the sense that a lot of people, especially in politics, will define gentrification as development, right, for a city, like in order to better the economy or financial aspects of a part of town. And broadly, basically what's happening is rebuilding on top of what was. And so whether it's good or bad, I think there's so many different views about it. I think from my personal perspective, it's good and bad, but I think the negative effects of what it does, especially for a city like DC that's the capital of our country, it probably outweigh the actual good that it does, if that makes sense.
Right. So these negative effects, what could you?
Being pushed out because they can't afford the higher prices. People whose families have lived here for generations being pushed out and having to find other places to live because they can't afford the higher prices, or even just the cost of living.
So the question is, how do we stop something like this?
Yeah, I don't actually know any government organizations or any other groups trying to reverse the trends of gentrification.
Yeah, I did not know a specific organization or any type of government act that was particularly directed towards it.
5 years ago, I was homeless. The economy had turned. I'd used up all my financial resources. The job situation wasn't bleak, and made some bad decisions. So, I ended up homeless, and I got involved with a place called Samaritan Inns. And there, I was able to. They had what they called a single room occupancy, which allowed me to stay there and save up some money, and then work on my finances, and and me myself, work on me. So I did that, and through that program, I got introduced to Jubilee. I think all this is related. Jubilee, Samaritan. At Jubilee, I heard about MANNA, how these people came through Samaritan Inns just like me, and they was homeowners.
So no, I really enjoyed the Home Buyers Club. It was, its own small community. Folks were really kind of on the same path. In some cases, people were obviously in different stages of trying to build up their credit or build up their savings, learning more. And I really appreciated it because it was an opportunity to learn new things. I really liked, we had guest speakers, different subject matter. learning kind of, wants versus needs, taking on kind of making sacrifices and understanding kind of the importance of, that financial literacy, which quite honestly, outside of the Home Buyers Club, a lot of it was brand new to me. I think there's things that you assume or, you kind of learn along the way, but being able to come to a place where really they were the experts and brought outside expertise in to, really kind of ensure folks understood everything was great. Not only was it about saving, but it was also about the whole purchasing process.
So the Home Buyers Club, I think, has been in existence for 27, 28 years. And so it's a model of education that combines setting goals in regards to building up your credit, budgeting and savings, but then combining that with kind of a support group kind of model. So people are learning together in various clubs, working with other people that maybe are going through the process of thinking about owning a home ever in their lives, or the history of their families, and so they're supporting each other while they're getting the education that they need.
It was a good opportunity, and I understood the commitment that I needed to stay here for within a certain amount of time because of the loan obligations and things like that. And it helped me to put down roots, and I saw the value of that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you talk about your experience with the purchasing program at MANNA?
Those folks at MANNA, they want to see you succeed.
Yeah.
They're like, yes, do this. You can do that. There was not one time at the class that when I went to MANNA, that I felt like, oh my God, I really cannot do this. You don't even have that thought process because they're so motivated and they're so excited. Every time you go to that meeting, it's just like, okay, they're excited about it. They know what they're talking about. So I better just fall in line.
Right on.
And get with the program, literally. Get with the program.
The thing I noticed when I first started working with MANNA is that people around here treat each other like family, which could be really great, and we also sometimes argue like family too. But it's all good. And then the respect that people are treating others that walk through the door with.
So would you say that you would have been able to purchase a home without MANNA's assistance?
I think I would have, but definitely would not have been the home that I have now. Before I actually wound up purchasing this home, I bid on 2 properties. They're actually both condos, so much smaller space, and they're both in Gaithersburg, actually.
Oh, wow.
So way far out. So I had to go that far out in the metropolitan area to find something that was affordable.
In addition to homebuyer education, we're a developer. So we have our own construction crews and an architect that's on staff. And our goal is to serve low and moderate income residents in the city, but also preserve racial and ethnic diversity in different neighborhoods. And at the same time, trying to provide people opportunities, especially people that have been shut out, which are historically minorities and lower income folks, opportunities to move up and build wealth that they can pass on to their kids and that will pass on to future generations as well.
Okay.
As soon as I signed the last piece of paper, that's when the keys was handed to me, and that's when I just bust out from ear to ear, just grinning, man. I was like, oh, I finally done it. It was a good feeling.
Wow, when I first got the keys to the house, it was exciting. There was relief, there was joy, there was applause from my parents. It was a thrilling experience. I had worked with MANNA for about 8 months towards the process, so there was a tremendous amount of celebration going on once I got the keys. And then walking through the door and understanding that it belonged to me. It was going to be a part of my legacy. It is a long, daunting process to begin to think about purchasing a home. There's a lot of paperwork. Sometimes there are things that need to be corrected in your credit report. There are letters that have to be written, and it can get overwhelming. and to have somebody on the other end of the phone, or even a cohort of people that you can spend time with that are also going through the process, was very helpful. It was with limited funds and a connection to MANNA and a supportive system with MANNA's staff that allowed me to purchase.
Come and check us out. We'll sit you down, we'll figure out what goals you have for housing and home ownership, and we'll help you put a plan together for how you can get there, and we'll make sure that you've got support along the way. And if you're willing to put in the work, which you can do, then we're going to be there and we're going to make sure that you reach your goal.